Evening all. How are we all doing? Yes, we had a lovely banquet, thank you. We had quite a wide selection of medieval fare. It was lovely. It was just all dumped in the middle of the table and everyone just kind of had to fight for it. If anything, there wasn't enough to go around, but no, it was good fun. It's a very long evening, but we enjoyed it. Yeah, we had name tags, which was Lord and Lady Govia, which I quite liked. No, I did consider. I mean, I was wearing a cloak and like a coin purse thing, like a leather coin purse, and Claire had a cloak as well, so we kind of looked the part. But no, I didn't take swords. I should have done, to be honest, because people turned up in full suits of armor, so I wouldn't have been out of place. Right then, what are we doing? So yes, it's Saturday. So this would have been what I was doing yesterday. Obviously we were out merrymaking, so I'm doing it tonight instead. That's true actually, yeah. Where are we? Right then. So I want to do planetary landings. I have been experimenting with it, and I will show you how far I got. Obviously, I'm not allowed to touch this stuff between streams, so my experimentation has been limited. But I put a teleporter in the alcove here on my test map, and if we run through it, you can see that we teleport down to what is very clearly terrain, which is nice. Hang on, let's move the ship. Right now it's using the ship's view of space, so if we move the ship like that to kind of light it from above a bit more. Ignore the random shuttle bouncing around. There you go, we can see it a bit better here. So we've got collisions, we can run about, we have very, very, very simple terrain. But what I'm doing at the moment is I'm not worrying about details so much. I'm just worrying about performance and generation time and just general, the topology of the thing. So we're already using the surface normals to define slopes and what should be rock and what should not be. And we're also using just a set plane to determine where the wet bits should be, so you can see that we're blending a lower roughness where it should be wet, and there's a bit of bleed over at the edges as well, just to again just sort of simulate a little bit of wet. Yeah, so obviously it's very basic, but this is like version 0.00001. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that we are we're spawning this landscape relevant to the planet that we're at. So we'll look for a planet in range, and then we will obviously generate the terrain relevant to that planet, and that makes the terrain available for the player to go down to. It's not textured at all right now, so all you're seeing is light and shadow. There are no actual textures, which is why it's looking a bit rubbish. So obviously we would replace the solid color with actual terrain textures, and we'll use nanite tessellation on all of that as well, so they'll all be tessellated surfaces, so they'll be covered with pebbles and rocks and all sorts depending on the environment. No, Anassi, sadly we can't. So Elite works differently to the way we do in Unreal Engine. So we're moving space around the player. So we need to generate our terrain as a static environment. In Elite, the terrains are not static, they're moving. The planets are moving around. But our surface terrain needs to be static so that we can take advantage of basically everything that Unreal Engine has in its toolbox for doing procedural generation. The upside of that is that we can have dense, lush jungles as a surface environment with as much ground clutter as we can throw at it. And we don't need to worry about having to move any of that in space because it's all a static ground environment. And then we'll generate that on the fly as you move around. So technically it can be infinite. So size-wise, you could just keep running in a same direction, and the train will generate forever, just like Minecraft does, until it kind of hits floating point issues. Right now it's not flagged for that, so there is an edge here. But if I just turn that feature on, then it will just keep generating forever. Yes, we will do caves. So the nice thing is we can use the red channel to determine where we cut holes in the terrain. So we can chop a hole out, stick a cave entrance there, and then procedurally generate a cave system, obviously beneath the ground. So that's all doable. I used to go caving quite a lot a few years back, so I'm quite well versed at being underground. And I kind of miss being underground, to be honest. Perhaps now I've lost a bit of weight, I'll get back to it. Randomly, you might hear a lot of weird noises behind me. That's because we picked up 3 kittens yesterday. We weren't planning to pick up 3 kittens. We were only planning to get the 2. But there was a 3rd one, and we couldn't bear just to leave it on its own, so we ended up getting 3 kittens. All of which are currently living in the office, so you might see random small cats flying past at some point. They'll turn up. If one jumps onto my desk, I'll grab it, and I know which one it will be. There's one which is particularly adventurous. So if she makes it up onto the desk, I will show her on screen. Yes, Anasi, that is why. So because Elite surfaces are, as I say, they're mobile surfaces, so they're having to move through space. So because of that, you can't have so much ground clutter. So you couldn't have a dense jungle on one of Elite's planets, because every single asset that makes up that jungle would have to be moving with the planet. And obviously that's computationally extremely heavy, which is why their surfaces are relatively sparse, because that's the only way they can do it. Obviously I don't know the ins and outs of their engine and what it's capable of, like if you push it to its limits, but from an outside observer's perspective, that's certainly what it looks like. But that's why we have static environments, so that we can have a virtually unlimited amount of surface detail, because it doesn't have to move anywhere. So it's that whole swings and roundabouts thing. It's like, do you want to sacrifice capability for visual fidelity, or would you rather go with lush surfaces? And personally, I want the surfaces to be as detailed as possible, so I don't mind the fact that we can't throw them around space. But yeah, so that's where we are with it. Now right now it is just a square of terrain below the ship, which is not being spawned dynamically. So the first thing we need to do is make sure we spawn that dynamically, and also give it its own perspective on space as well. So we're going to treat planetary surfaces like we do with shuttles, where they will have a location ID. So on the bridge, hang on, let's zoom in on the bridge. So when you go through this teleporter to the shuttle, it's setting the target vessel as 1. I kind of need to change some of the terminology here. But that is what's telling the game which set of coordinates to look at in terms of determining like the rotation of the skybox, where all the stars and planets are, where the sun is, and that sort of thing. So we need a separate one of those for here. Right now it's set to 0, which is the one we're using for the Magellan. So it will inherit the Magellan's orientation in space. So what we want to do with this is we'll give it its own unique ID, and then as you move around the terrain, obviously logically in the background your longitude and latitude are changing based on where you are on the surface. So we need to project that to a spherical coordinate system so that we can move space around dependent on where you are with your XY coordinates on the ground. So there's going to be some smoke and mirrors involved, but if you walk around the planet, obviously you're walking along a flat plane and then you're teleporting seamlessly to the opposite edge, but you will see the sky moving as if you're walking around the planet. So the smoke and mirrors should kind of mask the fact that you're walking along a flat terrain. But obviously there's a lot of stuff that we need to do to make that convincing. Sophie, thank you once again. You are consistently amazing every single stream. Thank you. The shuttle has its own perspective on the world. So it's right now the shuttle is kind of starting in the wrong location. It's over here, and it's kind of stuck in the middle of the ship. So if we come over here and just kind of roll left, then you should notice the shuttle get bumped. So it's actually colliding with the physics proxy, which is why it's going through the ground, because they're different shapes at the moment. But if we look at space, we can see that space is currently static on the Magellan because the Magellan's not moving. But if we go to the shuttle, you can see that the shuttle is moving, and that's the proxy that it collided with. It all looks a bit weird at the moment because we're not hiding the main ship. But yeah, so the shuttle physics actor has its own perspective on the world, which is separate from the Magellan, which is why, you know, it's bobbing around in space. Whereas if we go back to the Magellan, the teleporters are facing one another, so you've got to be careful when you go for it. You can see that the Magellan again is static in space, so they have their own perspectives on the world, and we can have as many of those as we want. So if you board a space station, then the space station will have its orientation and perspective on the world. So what you see out of the window is always relative to the thing that you're on at the time, including planets. So we need to make that 3, like so, to give us a third location. And then I guess we're going to need something that's reporting its orientation in the same way that shuttles do, because we've got these proxy actors, and we've got a flyable shuttle. Yeah, so we might need to make a copy of this for now. And then we need to update these details with respect to both the planet and then where you are on the planet. So again, so your longitude and latitude will define how we rotate the planet underneath you. So as you move around the surface, logically in the math, we're actually rotating the planet in terms of just mathematically underneath where you're stood. So you're always stood on top of a rotating sphere, and as that sphere rotates, obviously we then move space in accordance to that. So you should see, like, if the planet has a ring, then you will see the ring moving overhead as you move around the flat terrain, as we do all the math in the background. But that's like step 4 or 5 in the process. Step 1 is giving it its own perspective on the world. So I think what I'll do is I will duplicate that. This is a weird naming convention, but I'm going to call it Flyable Planet, because technically we're flying a planet. Right, but then unlike shuttles, we don't need proxy actors or anything. So we can keep that. We will generate that separately. And then we'll drive the rotation from the XYZ. Because the other thing we'll want to do obviously is things like moons. So again, as you're moving around the planetary surface, anything in the star system also needs to change its position in space. Now the nice thing is we already have all this done for shuttles, so we're using the same code for planetary surfaces. We just need to make sure that we drive the rotation value based on where the player is. But again, that will come later. I'll just leave that as is for now. So we will... Ooh, hang on, I've just had a visitor arrive. So here we go. This is Patches. She's like crazy adventurous and doesn't stop moving. And that the other two don't tend to come up here very much. They all have the zoomies at the moment. They're darting around like maniacs. Yeah, exactly, Tom. Netcore, yes. We move everything around the player. So every location where the player can walk about is static in the game world, and centered around the world origin, which means we get the most accurate physics. We're not having to worry about moving physics because everything's static, and we don't have to worry about things like object count and moving objects around. So we can pack it with detail, have full physics simulation, and everything should be good. Which would be good for things like vehicles on planetary surfaces. So we can do like full suspension sims and things. And again, the vehicle is on a static terrain, so we don't have to worry about any complex physics. And then the galaxy, the star system, and everything outside of that moves around the static location, whatever that may be it a ship, a station, a surface, or anything else. Okay, so this broadcast ship state is something that's basically running on a timer. So it's a timed function, and that's telling game state essentially where this object is in the world, and its orientation. So we're just sending some data so it knows where in the galaxy it is. So that drives the star field that you see out of the windows, or when you look up into space. The local coordinates tell the game where it is within the star system itself, so within that 1 light year cube, and obviously that's the rotation of the object at the time. So when you arrive at a star system and we spawn a planetary location, And we'll probably generate those automatically when you're in range of a planet. So when you sort of rock up to the orbital distance of a planet, we'll automatically just generate the terrain because it takes seconds to generate. So that if you then decide to go down to it, it's already there, it's already ready. And we'll drive the background data with this, so it knows what to draw as a skybox. Oh yes, and then we need the index, which is 3 on this one. Make sure that we're because we're adding all of this to an array on game state, which is replicated, so that all players know where everything is. But it's driven by, again, that ID, so we need to make sure that index 3 in the array is this particular ship. And as we add more ships and stations, we'll start driving this more procedurally. So we'll grow the array based on the amount of objects we have in the world. So we don't need to worry about autopilot or throttle because it's a planet. Don't need to worry about nav targets because it's a planet, or any of that. Yes, if you're on the surface and you look up, you will be able to see the ship. Because again, everything has a proxy version of itself. So if you're not on the ship, you see a proxy of the ship. And that... Ow! That kitten just ran up my side. Yeah, so if you're on the surface and you look up, you will see the ship flying overhead. The big question there is if you drop someone off on the surface and then warp away, what happens to the person on the surface? Now, there are 2 ways of approaching this. One, we lock the ship to orbit when a shuttle is not on it, so avoiding that problem altogether. Or 2, we stack the terrains in predefined slots. So if we have, say, 10 surface slots, and player A is in slot 1 on a planetary surface, you then fly up to the moon. Player 2 goes into slot 2, so they're on the moon. So you now have a planet surface, you have a moon surface, both of which are now generated. And then obviously the ship itself can continue to fly around. So in order to do that, it means we're generating multiple versions of the terrain, which has a direct impact on things like VRAM and object count and basically stuff that's going to destroy your computer. So we need to do testing to see just how feasible those things are. I'd say worst case scenario, if it proves to be too heavy to have more than one terrain at a time, then we'll simply lock the ship to orbit. And we'll say that if the shuttle has left the ship, you cannot warp the ship anywhere. So we'll disable the FTL whilst the shuttle's off the ship. If the shuttle gets destroyed, obviously we'll just re-enable the FTL. I think we'll probably start with that as the initial approach to this. And then if multiple terrains at once becomes viable, then we'll start looking at being able to drop people in different places across the galaxy. Because if we can do more than one terrain, then having one player on a planet and one player on the moon is literally no different than having one player on opposite sides of the entire galaxy. There's literally no difference between those two, so it opens up a lot of doors if we can make that work. No, it should be alright, Anasi, because it's generating locally. The physics will be replicated, but it should be alright. Because we tested that actually on a recent stream. We had two multiplayer players run off in different directions. In fact, let's drag that into the world. Where is it? put this in completely the wrong folder, so I need to tidy it up afterwards, but let's just go with it for now. So if we drag flyable planet into the world, so we now have the data for the planetary terrain existing in the world, and that's just now going to add that on its own to game state. Because we've set this for a matching ID, we now should have a light source for the terrain, which is physically separate from the light source for the ship. Let's just test that, and then I'll stick 2 players on it. Right, so the light's over there facing the ship, and yeah, and the planet's moving. So this is kind of an example of that's the mega cam view. So as you walk around the planet, again, we're updating where that is on the galaxy, side of things, orientation wise. So we'll be able to do things like this and have space moving around. The reason it's moving right now is because we've used the shuttle code, and obviously it has spawned a shuttle that has physics. So the shuttle is driving the orientation of the planet, which is why everything's moving. But it seems to be working rather well. Yeah, and the light is updating automatically as well, so you can see it's getting darker as the sun sets, so that's good. We'll draw an atmosphere around this as well, of course, where needed. And we just need to manage the visibility of those things so that the atmosphere is only visible to the person on the surface and not the person on the ship. Well, technically speaking, because we're going to be using nanite foliage, shadows are irrelevant. So you could have 1 billion trees all casting shadows, and it's not going to cost any more or less than 1 tree because it's using virtual shadow maps, and it's all nanite, and it's all virtualized. In fact, with 5.7, with nanite foliage, it's all voxelized in a distance as well, so that's going to be even cheaper. Hello, Kitten has come back. She's looking a bit manic. She's still got the zoomies. Oh, that's just the edge of the generation area. If I turn on... Hang on. Let me find out where it is. Oh yeah, bounded world. If I turn that off, and we'll also add 2 players this time. Test it in multiplayer. Right, so this is our 2nd player in multiplayer. So take them down to the surface. It's dark at the moment, which doesn't help. So the sky looks like it's spinning around like crazy. I'll have to turn off collisions on that, I think. Stop that from happening. So if I just take this one down as well. Oh. So that's the other player. And you can see that we have terrain generating off into the distance. There's some crazy pointy mountains. But this player could run off for miles and not affect what this one's seeing. Although interestingly, this one is seeing different orientation on the galaxy. So those are the kind of multiplayer things we need to check, and just make sure that like both players have the same physical view of space. Right, let's get rid of that. No, don't need to care about that. Don't need to care about that. I think that's the only place we're referencing it. Great, so that can go from there. To be honest, we don't need that either because we're driving. Yeah, we don't need that. So really, this is just a data object more than anything else. Don't need that. Don't need them. Don't need that. That. Planet's not going to go to warp anywhere. Although, interestingly, because we have that code, there is literally nothing preventing us building a planet that can go to warp. So we can have literally planet-sized starships warping around the galaxy, because all the game cares about is knowing where in the galaxy the object is, what its orientation is, and where within a system it is. And we're managing all of that separately to the actual physical surface. So you could literally have a planet warping around the galaxy, which could be interesting for something or other at some point in the future. Don't need that, don't need that. I think all that was just test stuff, yeah, so we don't need any of that. All we care about is a reference to game state, where we are, where we're facing, and we don't need to worry about loading anything, because we're driving this from where the planet actually is. So unlike a ship that might be somewhere else in the galaxy, the planet won't be moving, at least not this type of planet. Right, so because we've got no object with physics driving this object at all, I don't think we've got anything there we need to worry about. Yeah, so it should now be static in space. Oh, I know why the client can't see it. Right, it's because I'm running it from the editor, the client can't load the Sol system because it's already opening the SQLite database. So the database is locked, so it can't load the data from it, which is why the host can see Earth, but the client can't. Which means, similarly, the host can see the terrain and everything, but the client cannot. Hello. Cat has returned. No, don't stand on the keyboard. Yeah. Oh, and you can say hello to everybody. Squeaky toy. Yeah. Warping planets. Entirely possible. Right, so the test is, so we have obviously the sun there, Earth over there, and terrain stretching off into the distance. So if we, excuse the shuttle in the middle of the bridge, if we just pitch the ship down a bit. No idea what that is. What is it, and why is it there? Let's just pretend that's not there. Yeah, so the Sun and Earth are in exactly the same place for the planet, and different to where they are on the ship, meaning that all that is working as we wish it to. But if we turn this upside down, right, so just to make doubly sure, the Sun is now underneath us from the perspective of the Magellan, and it's still above us from the perspective of the planet. So we've now successfully separated out the orientation of the planet versus the orientation of the ship. So this terrain will always look like this until we drive the rotation based on your coordinates. I'm kind of itching to have a vehicle on this now. We need some kind of buggy that we can drive over it. It's interesting that it's generating the terrain so far away now that I've made it unbound. Because if I just go to our camera, yeah, it's made it huge. Okay. Yeah. Oh, and there's the crash. So I've noticed that if you change anything in the editor, it has a real penchant for crashing. So we need to make sure we freeze generation whenever we change stuff. Otherwise that will happen. It's quite annoying. Yes, Fopace, there will be everything that we can physically think of. I mean, we're planning to go all out with the planetary surfaces, so they need to be as detailed as we can possibly come up with. So, well, I suppose as we as we kind of expand on the detail of the surfaces from orbit, obviously we need to make sure that we have those biomes on the physical surfaces as well. Actually, on that note, I wanted to make sure we could have a proper sized Earth, which is something that I was messing about with. So if we just go to post-process a minute. Just turn on an ambient skylight. Should be able to see terrain there somewhere. Put that back before try going back into it actually, and also set that back to 3. There it is. Great. Just save all that just to make sure we don't lose it again. It's interesting. Why is it not lit with the ambient lights? wondering whether this was the height map I was messing about with. Ah, yes, it was. So you may recognize the terrain that we've got here. Specifically, there's good old Blighty. Because what I wanted to experiment with was driving the terrain based off of a pre-existing global height map, which is what we've got here. And obviously it's not overly detailed, which is why it's so tiny, but what we need to do is scale this and expand it to be truly planetary scale. Yeah, so there's I think it's only a 4K height map of Earth, so it's quite small, but but the point is that we are able to drive the height map from a texture globally. So the detail, if we zoom in close, none of this detail is coming from the height map. This is overlay detail, which is just driven by a noise function. The overall shape is what's driven by the height map. So when it comes to making sure that if you go down to a planet above the ocean, then when you load the surface terrain, you want it to be ocean. You don't want it to be like random landmass that wasn't there from orbit, because we want the surface environment obviously to be one-to-one with what you see, from space. But I want to change the scale of that, so we're doing like proper planet-sized terrain. Where is it? Make sure I got the right material. I think that's what I was using. Yeah, that's the surface. Just need the generator. Right. So scale-wise, where are we? Yeah, here. So we're taking our 2D height map, and I'm having to double the width, obviously, because it's a square otherwise. So we need to make sure that we get the right size. Don't think I made a note of that. So we need to know the circumference of the Earth in kilometers, which is 40,075. So if that's 69 kilometers, then it would have to be 40,000 kilometers. Yeah, which means that, and that divided by 2. So that should give us our right scale, which means that if we regenerate it, should get bigger. Definitely saved that, right? Yeah, okay. not sure if we can do that from here actually. Let's do it from the class itself. Oh, there we go. So this height map is now 1-to-1 scale with the Earth, which means we could be anywhere. You'll notice one of the issues with it is that it will flatten the surface based on the scale of the surface. So things like mountains will get progressively flatter the more you kind of expand the terrain. So we need to find the right balance between scale and then height amplitude, so that Everest is, is the right scale for the planet. But yeah, we could be flying around for hours there and find nothing. So, oops, zoom back into that. I suppose we could probably math this out, couldn't we? So if we are... just working out how to offset this a minute. So we want to offset the UV. Yeah, because you can offset from there. The problem is if I do that, it's going to change the scale, so I'm not for now. So let's just decrease that by a couple of 1,000 kilometers. And again, that's going to need rebuilding. Make it a bit bigger. Yeah, so what we're going to need to do is when we generate our planetary terrain, we're going to have to probably generate just a black and white mask to determine coastal regions versus continental regions, and then I guess just use that as a mask to make sure that the continent's the right shape, and then just rely on pure noise to do everything else, to do the actual features, like we have here. So obviously, where we've got mountains, we don't want them to look like blobby mountains like this. We want them to be like properly carved, like they have weathering going on. And we'll just use noise for the weathering, but it needs to look better than this. I would not be content with this. But yeah, so at least we've got the start of something, definitely. And I think we probably just need to raise the water level up a bit, which luckily we can do in our other material. Where was I doing that from? We're doing a lot of tweaking for this. There we go. So yeah, so this is our sea level base. So let's add a 1 to that, see which direction we need to go in. The other way. Okay. So 0, 0. It's getting progressively wetter. Too much. Yeah, something like that, I guess. Starting to look more familiar. Oh, wrong way again. Hello. Yeah, so the other issue with stacking is obviously when we're making material functions for driving terrain like mountain ranges and grassy bits and doing all the various biomes and everything. But our sea level is, in terms of the material, is driven by obviously an actual specified value. And now I've had to edit that to make it very much, you know, down from the world origin, because we've moved the actor, you know, physically below the ship. So if we're stacking terrain below the ship and we've got multiple slots for terrain, then obviously each one of those needs its own sea level offset. So, you know, programmatically we're going to have to drive all those changes. Right, where was the middle again? Over there, which is in the middle of the ocean. Of course it is. Oh, I suppose we could do that, couldn't we? I'm just thinking, if we take that and we divide that by 2, and then we take that and we divide that by 2, and then we plug that into there instead. That should be the middle of the map. Let's just make sure we reset it. Okay, that's moved us to there. This is a bit of guesswork, just working out where this is going to be. I'm going to move that off to the other side of the screen a minute. Just so I can update it. So if we move that that way, where does that put us? Over there. The right way or the wrong way? too far. Okay. I have a kitten following my mouse cursor on the screen. That's not going to go horribly wrong, is it? Let's try that. Yeah, look up, you might see my mouse. Yes, I did, definitely. So undersea environments is definitely something I wanted to do. Don't stand on the keys. Yes, I really want to be able to take a shuttle and dive the shuttle into the water and actually explore undersea in a shuttle, like a submersible. I think that would be really cool, especially when we have like water worlds and things, because we could have planets that have literally just an entirely liquid surface, be extremely detailed and full of life, but all of it be under the water. I think that would be amazing. And entirely doable, because generating detail underwater is no different than generating it on the surface, really. Where did that go? Over there. Okay. Just trying to work out which direction. Oh, I am going in the right way. Okay, good. Trying to move the map offset so that, oh. So a kitten just tried to grab my mouse pointer, missed, and landed in my shrimp tank. So we now have a wet kitten and a wet mouse and a wet mouse. I knew streaming with kittens would be amusing. Yeah, there goes the game. Go on. Okay, so we're around about the right latitude. Right, so are we going up or down is the question. Ah, almost there. You can probably guess what I'm trying to target. Oops, no, I'm going the wrong way. Almost there. Bear with me. Right, I'll do. What's that? Yorkshire? I should. Ah. Player's not high enough. So that's the other pitfall, actually, with with having predefined slots for terrain. We need to know where that terrain actually is. And what I'll do is I'll have it... Oh, no. Way too fast. I'll fire a line trace down so that we are capturing the actual surface location rather than trying to teleport the player purely by chance at the right height. So we start off like a kilometre above the surface maybe, and then we'll fire a line trace down, see whereabouts it actually hits the surface, and there's our spawn point. Obviously that wasn't high enough. Yeah, no, actually, no, other way. Oh, that's probably a bit high up, but yay, look, England. It's interesting actually that the height map is not great around England. It's got a lot of it under the water where it shouldn't be. But yeah, but you can see the speed that generates it. It's like practically instant, so that's good. So yes, hurrah, running around the UK. Now, fortunately, we're not going to be drawing like physically accurate versions of known places. Like all our planets are going to be procedural. So other than like the Moon and Mars, it doesn't necessarily matter too much how accurate coastlines and things are. It's just obviously, you know, for the likes of England or the rest of the planet Earth, we know what things look like, so they'll be more challenging. But for Earth, obviously, we're not going to have the ability to land just anywhere on Earth, because we can't do, you know, cities and traffic and cars and roads and civilization at that scale procedurally. It's just too much. We might be able to make some like polar landing regions on Earth, places that don't have that stuff. So anything on Earth or planets like Earth will have to be limited landing zones where you're restricted to that landing zone. So if we've got like a city planet, then we'll have like a building or something that you go down to, and then you're limited to that area because we can't just generate an entire city planet surface. At least not one that's inhabited. But yeah, okay. So yes, we can do Earth. Yes, we can do terrain. So let's have a look at spawning the relevant terrain for the relevant planet type. So Right, that's the generator, and this is the one that... No, that's the generator. That's one where we drive the look of the thing. So we will build up these materials for different biomes. So we'll probably have a different material for each biome on the surface, and then we'll drive those biomes probably via noise, but also via some input maps. So when we generate the planet from space, obviously we want to have the polar region, we want to have the equatorial zone where you'll find more of the desert type environments, and the temperate regions, and then we'll mix that up with noise a little bit to make it a bit more diverse. We'll probably then save that as a render target with all of those different biomes saved as probably as a heat map, and then we'll use that to drive the actual surface biomes. So what you see on the surface again matches what you see from space, and then we'll start building up a surface library of different biomes, and we'll use those for populating those regions. So we I guess need to get started with building up that library. For now, as you can see, we're not using textures, we're just using solid color, just to test the thing. Where are we going? Right, so let's start building this into our actual framework stuff. So blueprint systems, galaxy system, procedural land, and oops, call this like biome materials, I guess. Materials, and then we'll start building up our biome library there. Let's go back to where that one was stored again a minute. Which window did it do it in? That one. Yeah. So we'll just copy that there. That one can be the grassland one. Hey Don. And yes, it's a random Saturday stream on account of us getting all medieval last night. So the nice thing about these biomes as well, because we're using surface normals and height for generating the different regions, it means that polar mountains can be different from grassland mountains. So we can use the temperature of the biome to determine how we generate that space. That's not a bad shout, Jason, yeah. So very simply, again, just because we are testing at the moment, if we just literally make the desert one deserty. And make that like sandstone or something. It's probably not quite dark enough, to be fair. Yeah, so the watercolor is an interesting one. So this is what color we're coloring the terrain underneath the water. So it's kind of like the seabed color. So I guess we want to kind of take that, but just darken it down a bit, just because it's wet. I also want a lunar one as well. It should be fairly simple because that's just going to be lots and lots of zero saturation greys. Oops, no, not that. Again, this is like just simple stuff. Right, and then for each, what's the best way of doing this? I suppose for each type of planet, right now we'll just have a planet-wide biome, just so that we can generate different surfaces on that. So grab our planet actor again, which is over there. I was wondering whether we use a global event for now. Yeah, it's probably easier if we do that. So if we grab our global event handler, and then we'll bind global event by name, and we'll just use a string array just for testing because it's easier. So planet type updated. Oh, cat just stepped on the keyboard. Or even better, new planet in range. Again, so the idea is when a planet is in range, we will configure its surface accordingly. And they'll all just use the Earth map for now, but we can at least switch biomes around. So if we get that, so yeah, I guess we only need index 0 anyway, because we're not going to use the full array. And then we will switch on string, and then we can change our planet type. So we'll do Earth-like, desert, ice, and moon. Just use those ones for now. So ultimately what we want to do is we want to get our child actor. Cast to shader world actor. So we are using shader world for this, in case anyone was wondering. That might not be the final solution we go with. I'm looking at Worldscape, Shader World, and the voxel tool. In an ideal world, it would be nice to have fully voxelized terrain, because then we can have overhangs and arched terrain, and make some really crazy surfaces. But we also need like Earth-sized planets at scale, and I'm not quite sure how well it will run that. So at the moment, Shader World has proven to be the quickest and easiest to implement, so I'll at least run with that for the time being. What variable are we changing? So hopefully this is the right function. And actually, oh no, we can't. I really wish you could select on string, because that would, unless you can select. I keep forgetting whether or not you can select on string or not. No, you can't. So select on string would be like really super useful, but we don't have that. So instead, we shall just brute force it. So that was M, surface, biome, grassland, surface, biome, desert. Polar and moon. Update planet biome. So again, we won't do planet-wide biomes eventually. This is just to test, just to see whether we can do that. Okay. Check that these are right. I guess we just need to sort this one out. Okay, that will do. Right, so the next thing we need to know is how do we know what's in range? Now we do happen to have that information on the sensors, short range specifically, but I don't think we're actually actively updating that all the time unless we're actually on that mode. So let's have a quick look a minute. I mean, ideally we don't want to drive this from the sensors because you know, the sensors is supposed to be an output system, not an input system. So we don't want to start like querying some panel on the bridge to work out if we're drawing terrain or not. So in the long run, we need something separate that's driving more of an overall game knowledge base. It's been a good long while since I've looked at this one, actually. Right, so it must be running on a widget. Driving something from a widget would be even worse. Yep. Really depends on what it is, Don. Yeah. We've got some bits of C++, but at the moment, while we're prototyping everything, it's predominantly blueprints. I don't tend to like look at the C++ unless we need to make something that like runs on tick or something like that. We have a zoomy cat again. Hello. What was I doing? Oh yeah, short range. So we might be able to actually drive this from the data. Actually, if I hang on, a plan is forming. Because what we do is when the sector location is updated, yeah, this one. So this gives us the details for essentially this. It's the satellite objects. So we know what objects are within this system. So what we can do, if we grab a copy of that a minute, and we put it on here, let's start organizing this a bit because it's getting a bit messy. Right, so that was a test I was doing to put the shuttle on the surface, but I don't need that for a minute. Right, so we need... Right, so first of all we need that. So the ship enters a system. So we need a local version of the data for the sector we're in. And if we make sure that we replicate that, do we want to replicate? Yes, we do want to replicate that. And then similarly, we want to make sure that we are also replicating this. Yeah, it should be fine to put it on the client. I'm going to stick it on always relevant so that we don't worry about cull distancing on the net code, because what we don't want to happen is an event to trigger and then not be updated on the client. Although, that having been said, we do want that, but I think what we'll do is we will make this into a rep notify, because any joining clients obviously need to know what's in the system and what the planet should be, etc, etc, etc. So if we grab that, and then specifically we want satellite objects. Actually, we don't want to do it now, do we? Actually, no. So what we actually need is we need a looping function. And so timer by function. And this is going to be check for planet. And we'll do that at once a second. It doesn't need to be something that's happening very rapidly or in real time. So if we make a function on here, check for planet. So once per second, we're going to grab our replicated variable. I suppose so we only want this running on the server. We don't want the clients doing this, so we'll do an authority check. We want to check for the new data only on wait, actually no, so hang on. We're generating some of the background data on the client, so it doesn't have to go over the network. So it's this bit that we only want running on the server. We do want the client caching their own version of this. So so then we want to get, sorry, to break that, we only want satellite objects, and for each. All we care about is the local coordinates with this, so we'll get the local coordinates of the object, and then we also want to know from the game state where the ship is. So if we get ship state, so the moment I'll just use reference 0, which is the Magellan. We'll expand that in the future to support whatever ship we're on. So the idea here is we take the local coordinates of the ship and the local coordinates of the planet, and then we do a distance measurement between the two, so we know how far those objects are. If I'm going to put that up there a minute so that so that we can use the completed pin without making a mess. And then we need a local array of distances. Distance is, oops, that needs to be a float, and it needs to be an array. Alright, and all we're going to do is we're going to build an array of distances to those objects, and then once we've done that, we will get I forgot how to do it now. Get first, or get top, get from float. Ah, there it is. Minimum of float array, that's what I was looking for. So we know what the smallest distance is from this, and we know what index that's at. So then all we need to do on the completed pin is we just need to get, sorry, from that one, we will get that specific object from the array. So we now know what the closest planet is, and therefore what type of surface we need to generate. So armed with this, we can break the struct and specifically grab our object type. Just make sure that this is the one we actually want. Oops, no. Yeah. So what we can probably do actually to make this whole thing cleaner, yeah, so if we promote this to a replicated variable, and we make that a rep notify, then what we can do on here is we can do a select on this one because it is an enum. It's going to be a bit of a monster one, but we can update the material. So if we go back there, basically we can skip setting up a global event here and instead do it within the rep notify instead. So we'll just cast to our child actor, set the material, and we'll drive that from this. So then all we need to do is just pick which material we're going to be using for each one. So we'll make a lava one. See, this is going to cause us a little bit of an issue because terrestrial planet is a bit vague. We need to really expand on this for the type of terrestrial planet. I mean, it could be like Mercury. Mercury is very moon-like, so you want to use the moon texture, whereas Mars is very like iron rich, so it's very orange. So we'd need some different categories there to expand that out. So I think if I just go desert for those two for a minute. So that one was biome grass. Biome grass. Water world should be easy because it's literally just a big sea. Icy body, be biome polar. Stick moon for the dwarf planet. We use moon for the lava planet as well for a minute. Right, then we should have no materials for the rest of them. Right, so because this is associated with a rep notify variable, any joining clients that join after we've worked this out should get this update automatically. And this is only ever updating on the server because it's only the server which is running this check planet event. So just to double check the logic, we're grabbing our ship state, we're specifically getting the Magellan for that one, we're grabbing the local coordinates of the ship, we're going through our list of satellite objects, so our planets, we're measuring the distance to each one, we're building an array of that. Now I think, if memory serves, arrays get reset every time you run a function, but just in case, we're going to clear it anyway. Just so we're starting from a clean slate each time. Otherwise, we don't want some old data hanging around in the array. So we'll clear the array, fill it full of our distances. We'll grab the closest one, use its reference to pull out whichever planet that was, and then we'll set our object type, which determines the material. So, all that having been done, let's see whether it works. Now obviously in the Sol system it's going to be a bit different because the Sol planet's done manually, so they're not necessarily working right. I can see already that it's green, so it might be working, we don't know yet, so let's go to a different one. Let's go to Mercury. The fact that that's not already scanned, I'm hoping is because we're running it in the editor, but one of the other things I need to fix, probably. We've had a whole stack of bugs recently, which have some of them have been quite gnarly, but most of them are in multiplayer, so it's always a pain to debug and fix. So what we're looking for is, as we approach, we want the surface to change, which I believe it already just did, so that's good. Yeah, exactly. So fixing multiplayer issues in the editor is nigh on impossible because a multiplayer session in the editor works very differently to one like in a packaged game, to an annoying amount. Right, so if we go to, where is Earth, isn't it? That one. So if we go back to Earth, and something I've done, by the way, is I've made it so that you can use the external camera view from anywhere now, at any time. So you no longer need to be sat at the helm to use it. So as we approach Earth, and Earth becomes the closest planet, the terrain should change to a green biome. Haha! Success. Okay, that worked. So the next thing we want to do is we want to be able to disable the terrain completely when there is no planet in range. So if we pick an orbital distance, it's going to be in centimeters, so I'm going to use a nice reliable length converter website. So if we say 1,000,000 kilometers in centimeters. I love this website, by the way. I like that it doesn't ever truncate anything, so you get all the zeros. So that's however many zeros that is in Unreal units. So if there's no planet within 1,000,000 kilometers of your location, then we'll kill the terrain generation. Go away tab. Yeah, that too, Anasi. In fact, I'll add that to the list. We also need our teleporter to also act accordingly. In fact, I think we'll make a new teleporter for that. Obviously, when this is fully implemented, you'll be taking a shuttle down anyway, so it won't matter. It becomes irrelevant. But for now, while we're testing, we'll just teleport to the surfaces. But obviously, with each surface being different, the surface height is going to be different. So we need to make sure that we do the line traces to get the correct foot location for landing. So I'll do a whole new teleporter for that. Where are we? So planetary surface. So as part of this, so if the minimum value is greater than a bazillion Unreal units, so if it's not, then we'll set our object type and not destroy the terrain or anything. If it is greater than a bazillion Unreal units, then we want to grab that. No, not that. That. Actually, if we purecast that a minute, because we're going to need this for both. So we'll freeze the generation, which should make it invisible if it's too far away. Otherwise, we shall unfreeze it. Yeah, that should do it. Okay. So we go back to Mercury again, because we know that has a different texture. In fact, let's do Mars. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, that one. Right, and then we go for our external view. So as we leave Earth, we should see the terrain vanish. It's not vanishing. Okay, So that's obviously not doing the trick. So that's not what we want. I could just set the actor hidden in game, but that's... I'm wondering whether using the freeze debug is possibly not working whilst running. So we've only got that freeze there, we don't have... Alright, now what I will do, we'll freeze it anyway, for good measure, and then we will do... Yeah, and we'll set actor hidden in game, which will be true or false. Yes, so everything that we stack below the ship should be invisible when you're on the ship. There's a small issue there with nanites because nanites cannot be distance culled. Even if you set a hardened manual culling value, nanite will not cull a static mesh, which is really annoying, and I wish it did. I shall petition to have that behaviour changed, because that's going to cause us issues in several ways. Plus it messes with my optimization. But yeah, so when you're on the ship like this, you shouldn't see the terrain below you at all. That should be invisible unless you're down there. We're going to vanish. Ah, there we go. So the train has gone because we're 1,000,000 kilometers away. And as we approach Mercury, at 1,000,000 kilometers, it should appear again. Good, good. The Magellan definitely cannot land under any circumstances. If you try it, it will just explode. Yes, planetary landings will be done via shuttles. So the main ship itself cannot land on planets for a bunch of reasons. It's all based on how we render space and how we manage the ship traversing the galaxy. So basically we move space around the static ship interior, and because of that, and because of how large and complex the ship interiors are, we cannot move them to the planetary surface. And because the planetary surfaces are static and highly detailed, we can't move them either. So you've got a planetary surface that you cannot move, you've got a static ship interior that you cannot move, so neither of those things are mobile. So the only way to transition from one to the other is to use something that is mobile, i.e. a shuttle. So you'll just basically take shuttles down to surfaces and back up again. Yeah, whilst we have ship interiors which are this detailed, yeah, there's just no way of doing it real time. We could make a proxy, but see, the same thing is true. I mean, we could... Just thinking off the top of my head. No, because then you'd need to see it out the window, and what? See, again, if you're flying the ship be it a shuttle or anything else, above the planetary surface, then obviously you'll want to see, forests and trees flying past as you're flying along. But in order to do that, one of those two things has to be moving. So either you're moving the planet past the window, or you're moving the ship across the planet. Neither thing can move because of how detailed they're going to be. So you couldn't have a proxy for the planet or the ship, because neither of them could be detailed. So when you're looking out the window of a shuttle, the shuttle itself is moving, because a shuttle is small enough and low detailed enough that it's not made of thousands of pieces and it's not filled with physics objects. So we have no problem moving that and the player together within the game world. But that only works for something that's shuttle sized. Obviously there's going to be an upper limit of just how big and complex we can go before things start falling apart on a physics level. But Starships isn't it, certainly. It's going to be large shuttles at most. Yeah, I like how Delta puts it. If you try and land the ship, it will make its own way to its own crash site. So the other good thing that we've tested with this actually is having it adjust the terrain location to the world origin based on your landing point. So we'll probably do that so that when the shuttle enters the planetary atmosphere, or just the planetary altitude that we're going for non-atmospheric worlds, we will shift the terrain to the world origin where you land. So the world origin for the train is constantly shifting. Hang on, there's a cat in the computer. Which will keep everything a lot more stable, so we're not having to traverse miles, to the world origin if we need it. And then we'll just change that every time you land. Again, from a player perspective, it'll be seamless from your perspective. So you'll just get out of the shuttle, you'll be on the surface, everything will be fine. But from an engine perspective, we're shifting the surface to you and always landing you at the world origin. So where you appear above the surface is always going to be X, Y, 0. You can obviously then just fly off and land wherever you want, but it's always good to start everything at the world origin so that we're the most accurate we can be in terms of floating points and physics and everything else. Hello. Cat on the keyboard. Do you want to say hello to everyone again? Oh, she's purring. That's good. Okay, so yeah, I would have thought so, Anassi. That is one of the things I was looking at in terms of quality of life and stuff for the game. Like, we want to be able to, get out of the ship, or get out of a shuttle rather, open the trunk section, pull out some kind of vehicle, and then go driving off across the surface. If you've been driving for like half an hour, then you're not going to want to go all the way back to the shuttle. So being able to call that to your location would be good. Having it auto land is going to be an incredible challenge, because it's going to have awareness of where the trees are, where the rocks are. It's going to need to pick somewhere suitable to land. And anyone who's played Elite Dangerous for long enough has probably seen their own ship crater into the surface when you've called it down to you. It certainly happened to me before, where I've just been sat there in my SRV just thinking, what do I do now? My ship literally just blew itself up. So we'll have that issue to deal with, but that's a problem for future me. the surfaces will be fully continuous, so you'll be able to walk across the whole planet all at once, well, like I am now. So there's no edge to this. It can go on forever. Like if I decide to fly sideways, here, let's turn the camera up a bit. Right, so if I fly across the terrain, you can see that the terrain is just constantly generating, and this is how quickly it generates. It's rapid. Again, we're using just a height map of Earth at the moment, just as a test. But you'll see that the Earth loops. So the way we'll handle players walking around a planet is the edge of the height map is probably here somewhere. So when you reach the edge of the height map, it will teleport you to the opposing edge of the height map, which is over here. So it will have teleported you to there, and then you just keep walking across the height map. Now, because it loops round, visually, if you're stood here, you'd still see the other continent beyond. But because you teleport halfway, where the join is, you might get a brief flicker or something, but you'll just continue walking towards whatever you can see in the distance, because it does just loop. And the same in the polar region. Obviously, it looks a bit weird at the moment on this one, but if you were to walk across the northern border, it would teleport you down to the southern border. Well, actually, on the polar region, rather, it would teleport you to the opposing edge. And that's going to cause an issue in itself, because obviously, if you're walking this way and you hit a teleport point here, then because it's obviously supposed to be a circle, then you need to teleport over here facing this way. So the polar regions are going to be challenging, to say the least. And we might need to do something at the polar cap, because obviously the closer to the geographical pole you get, the closer the teleport location is going to get to itself, until you reach like the pole itself, where you're just teleporting on top of yourself. So we might need to do icy mountain ranges around the polar caps, just to make sure that we avoid that problem. But that aside, it should be fine, and you will have the entire planet's worth of surface to traverse all at once, without any loading screens, without any barriers. You can just walk all the way across the planet. And they will be 1-to-1 scale planets as well. Yeah, there will have to be some kind of ice wall. Yeah, so when it comes to surface points of interest, we will generate those, because we need to send probes down. So we need to tie all these different systems together. So the kind of the workflow from the bridge is you'll rock up to a planet. You will do your scan. You go to the short range sensors. You do a short range scan of the planets. That gives you your planet map. That gives you your surface points of interest. It gives you your data overlays for, like, if there's civilization, where is it? If there's life, where is it? That sort of thing. And then we'll drive points of interest from that data. So obviously in the back end already knows where that stuff is. So when you've done your short range scan, the 3D map on the bridge will have little flashing indicators to show that there are points of interest across the planetary surface. So you'll be able to select those and then send a probe to those locations for retrieving, whatever. Or you can use those same points of interest as a target for the shuttle. So you transfer that to the shuttle, you then fly down to that location. I want to make it freeform, so we want people to be able to just like dive towards the surface, and wherever you are relative to the surface terrain, we'll take that XY coordinate, and then after we handle the transition to the surface, your shuttle will be flying above the surface in that same spot. So you should be able to enter and exit the planet environment at any location you choose and land wherever you want. So we'll have the points of interest there as just a guide only. So, if we want to guide people towards content, then that's what we can use. There might be some alien structure that's like some old beacon or something. So we want to be able to flag that exists on the bridge. Otherwise you'll never find it. Definitely, AJ, yeah. So something that this system supports is geometry stamps. So if we want an area to be flat, then we can just create a geometry stamp that is flat terrain in that location. So we can take any height map we want and then stamp that height map onto the terrain, and it will use that height map instead of the procedural generation for that terrain. Obviously we're doing it on a global scale here to create Earth. But yeah, generally you can just stamp height maps all over. So when it comes to things like creating like a procedural village, so in the past I've spoken about to what degree of progression do we want to represent on planetary surfaces, and I'm likening it to villages in Minecraft. So if a planetary society is kind of pre-technology and it's still living in isolated villages, then we can model that through procedural generation and use terrain stamps to kind of stamp out the terrain where we're putting those villages, so you don't like have houses sticking out through mountains and that sort of thing. And obviously there's a cutoff there as to how advanced they can be before physically spawning them becomes too problematic. Like, we couldn't spawn an entire town with roads and vehicles because that's taking on too much in terms of making that fit the terrain and making it performant and all the rest of it. But we shouldn't have an issue doing anything like Minecraft villages. And we'd approach it in a similar way. It would be biome driven. We'd have all the settlements kind of focused around like bodies of water, and the nice thing is we've got our various terrain maps that we're generating and the various data layers, so that we know where the coastlines are, we know where the lakes and rivers will be, so we can strategically spawn village locations near to resources that make sense. And things like like an alien research outpost, we could put one anywhere, and then we can shape the terrain around it to make sure that it's makes sense in the world. And then we can also use that to negate things like a forest. So if we had an alien outpost, we could stamp that in the middle of where there would be a forest, but that will prevent the forest from spawning in that particular area. So we have a lot of flexibility around how we generate surface details and surface content. Yep, world gen. This is one of the things I've been excited about the most for working on. So I'm glad that we're finally kind of getting to dipping our toes in the water a little bit. Oh yeah. I won't be stopping this anytime soon. I'm planning to work on this until it's done. If that takes a decade, then it takes a decade. I'm not stopping. Yeah, it's supposed to be the UK. We're using a very low resolution height map, and a lot of the coastal regions are like beyond the cutoff point on the height map. I mean, the rest of the world doesn't look too bad, but yeah. Like I live here in the sea, apparently. Somerset's gone. So yeah, and again, the point of using this Earth height map was just to satisfy curiosity in that we can generate a global terrain that adheres to the right, coastal regions. Because one of the most important things is being able to, like, if you're in orbit and you can see an island there, whatever island that is, it's something Nordic, I don't know. So whatever island that is, if you can see it from orbit and you're flying your shuttle down towards it from orbit, then when you get to the surface environment, that island needs to be there and be roughly the same size and shape. Otherwise, that will just destroy immersion. So we need to make sure that when we generate our space map, we then write it to a render target, and then we use that render target when generating the surface terrain, so that we've got that consistent view, all the way down the stack. Unfortunately, it does it instantly, so that's good for us. Thank you. I think Everest is a mess of spikes. Hang on, let's have a look. So Everest is here somewhere, isn't it? Not quite sure. Not quite sure which one of these is Everest, but it's around here somewhere. But yeah, it kind of looks like this. Because we're using, obviously, a low resolution height map. So again, when we stretch this out to be literally 1-to-1 scale, then we lose all height detail because it averages it over that distance. So we need to dramatically increase the vertical power of the height map the bigger we make it, and then when it comes to surface detail, so all of the actual surface geometry, we fill that in with noise algorithms, so we get like cool little outcroppings like this. Or we chuck craters all over it, that sort of thing. We can also blend noise together, so we can take our map of Earth and fill it with craters. I think I've got that actually. Can't remember whether I actually had that added or not. Did I have craters added? Don't think I did on this one, so yeah, so we could add those together and then give that a scale. I think it needs to be a fairly big number. Make this a vector 3. Might not be strong enough, but let's... Oh, actually. One of the things that it doesn't do is update in real time, so just have to mess with that. I'll have to mess with the numbers, but yeah, you can drive craters and things across it as well. So it's all multi-layered. Where are we? Will do, DJ. Will do. Yes, we will rotate the sky around the planetary surface. Again, we will use the latitude and longitude of the player to determine the rotation of the sky, to give the effect of obviously flying around a sphere when you're in fact flying around a flat terrain. Right, so we wanted to sort out actually landing on the surface rather than floating above it. So we need to create a new teleporter. So let's just duplicate that a minute and call it Planet Portal. Blueprint systems, galaxy system, procedural land. Okay, let's just move that over there. Right, so we want our planet portal to work a bit differently to the way the shuttle one does. Right, so right, so that transform, we want to basically grab the location of the planetary surface and do a line trace. Now it just so happens that I was doing that on here. So if we grab that, okay, so we don't care about that, so we want to go, hang on, where's the actor location? Right, so that's where the surface is physically located. And obviously the terrain changes that value. So if we maybe start halfway above that, and then I guess we need to make that, I don't know, like 60,000 or something. Hang on, what am I doing? Yeah, that. So from 60,000 above the terrain to minus, that's probably more than long enough to hit something. Do a visibility trace, grab our hit location, and then we want to make that into a transform. So make transform. So the location would be that. Yeah, facing backwards, scale could be 1. That kind of needs to be a replicated teleport, really, but I mean, technically that shouldn't work in multiplayer because we're not... well, I suppose if the server owns the actor, then it has authority to teleport the player, otherwise it won't. I'll debug that afterwards. Blah, 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 blah. So we don't need any of that stuff. We're already doing... No, actually, we do need that, don't we? So now we need to set the current vessel. And we don't need to set our control rotation. Right, so it should place us exactly on the surface, although probably more likely in the middle of the surface because we haven't taken the capsule half height into account. So let's just try that a minute. Yeah. Oh, I haven't replaced the actor, have I? Durr. Right, so that we need to replace with that. Replace that actor with that one. Target vessel is 3. Right, let's try that again. Huzzah! Perfectly to the surface. I don't think it did a whole half height thing. Hang on, let's... No, it's perfect. Rapid as well. I mean, we can do that at a sprint and just keep on sprinting without even breaking a sweat. Okay. Yeah, we should be able to do the client. The problem with the client is obviously it doesn't have any knowledge of Earth because of a database lock. Obviously it will run package, but not in the editor. But let's just try it anyway. I've got a second direction light set up anyhow, so it should at least be able to see. Okay, so there's the client, and then the server. Boom. Yeah, so it's working. And obviously the ship's up there somewhere. Yeah, so you should be able to like run infinitely in any direction, and it will just generate the terrain client side. Oh, I've just thought of the ultimate test. Because everyone's going to try this, aren't they? Can I Xavier onto the surface? Oh no, because it's not the right pawn, is it? Hang on. We can do that. Oh, and there goes the crash. That's true. To be honest, if I set simulate physics on it, then it probably would. Good evening. No, it won't teleport an object. We could probably get to the point where as soon as the object hits the teleporter, it would go through and then just land on the floor with you following. But we couldn't retain holding it because it's using a physics handle. Yeah, we haven't updated to 5.7 yet. Although the nice thing is, apparently, one of the main issues with stereo rendering in VR is kind of half fixed in 5.7. The full thing should hopefully be fixed in 5.8, but our VR performance at the moment is less than it should be because we can't do stereo rendering. Because as soon as you enable stereo rendering with a non-forward renderer, it will crash the engine. And this has been a bug for a few versions now, but apparently it's slated to be fixed for 5.8. So we should be able to support full stereo rendering properly on VR and have a big performance boost because of that, which would be nice. Right, I need to replace this actor again. Right, so we are casting specifically to the character. I don't think we need to though, because we can still set the transform even without that. Because we could do cast to pawn. So get rid of that one. Just cast to a generic pawn. I suppose I might as well plug that in there. Yeah. Because I think the chairs are pawns, so let's give that a try a minute. Good question about Star Engine. I guess first off, I don't know enough about Star Engine in order to give you a direct comparison between it and Unreal. I think the biggest thing, and I suppose it would mean, well, what aspect of the engine specifically are we talking about? Because obviously Star Engine, from Star Citizen's sense, is what they're using for doing Planet Tech and everything else. So the physics side of things, and specifically mobile physics grids, is something it has over Unreal. The ability to board a ship, have that ship have its own physics, and then have that fly around as a moving object in the world is something that we don't do. So I think for me that's probably the biggest benefit that Star Engine has over Unreal is that localized physics per ship. I mean, you can do something like it in Unreal, but not like built into the engine like they can. Obviously, it's an MMO. But, there's a lot of netcode there that Unreal doesn't have. But in terms of visual fidelity, I would say we can make our planetary surfaces look denser and more lush than Star Citizen surfaces because Unreal has a lot more tools in its toolbox for that sort of thing. Things like nanite foliage in 5.7, Lumen for real-time GI, and because we're doing static surfaces, we can have a much greater density of like flora and fauna on surfaces as well. Yeah, so it's about the visuals, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, I've said it before, the tech behind Star Citizen is immensely good. I mean, I know everyone moans about how much money they've wasted over the years or whatever, but you know, the tech that they've created is second to none. It's incredible, and you know, I'd love to have tech that good. But you know, Unreal obviously has also been developed many years and has its own capabilities. But yeah, there's some impressive stuff with Star Engine. Things like, you know, full planetary clouds, volumetric gas giants. We can do all of that in Unreal. It's just, you know, we're not making an MMO, and the difference between making a peer-to-peer game and an MMO is there's a chasm between those two things. The server infrastructure, like the server meshing and all that sort of stuff. You know, we don't have to worry about any of that with what we're doing. So, you know, they're very different games in that regard. Yes, we will be getting a Steam frame as soon as we can get our hands on one. You know, we need to test everything. Right, so can we send a client to the surface? Oh, on a chair, almost. I mean, hang on, they were almost there. Okay. Hang on then, can the server go down in a chair? That's the question. Well, yeah, I mean, it's, you know, you're talking about a proprietary engine that's, you know, built for what it's built for. Unreal is a generalist engine that just happens to be very good at what it does. Oh, stop crashing. Is it this whole null pointer thing again? Because it keeps crashing trying to do garbage collection, and it keeps throwing a null pointer on the garbage collection, but that doesn't look like what this is. I have to look into this. You know, obviously we will not ship if it's crashing. So I need to make sure that that it's stable when packaged. I know it does have issues in the editor, but obviously for a packaged game, you want it to be solid. Yep. I mean, the stuff that Unreal's capable of these days is incredible, and I think one of the biggest things for our planetary surfaces is going to be nanite foliage, and we don't just need to use nanite foliage for foliage either. We can use nanite foliage on any static mesh that we're spawning like foliage. So we're talking rocks, cliff faces, buildings even. We can scatter anything we want on a planetary surface to extreme numbers. I mean, we can have literally millions and millions of trees, and then bushes under the trees, and then ground clutter. We can make it so content dense that you're literally hacking your way through like solid jungle with a machete. And because it's all done through nanite and it's all virtualized geometry, performance wise it's the same as just having a dozen trees, because the whole thing's been virtualized, and as long as you handle it properly, then performance remains stable. And this is one of the big things with nanite, because you know, nanite gets a lot of bad press for being, you know, poorly optimized and poor performance, but if you use it properly in the way it was intended to be used, then it's very performant. So if you've got like a bunch of like single plane transparent meshes or masked meshes for like grass and stuff or trees, then yes, it's going to struggle really badly. If you then convert all those things to actual static meshes, so they're fully geometry, then all of a sudden you've reclaimed all your FPS back, because that's how Nanite's designed to work. So if you optimize for it, then it's performant, which of course is what we'll be doing. You'd be surprised, Dave. I mean, nanite foliage is a massive game changer, because they're voxelizing distance objects. You no longer have imposters or imposter pop-up or anything like that. It literally just collapses to voxels the further into the distance you go, which completely solves the performance issues. And they still cast shadows as well, which is even better. But yeah, look into nanite foliage. It's amazing. What's my background? Well, I've been an IT manager for most of my working career, and game dev's just been a hobby. I mean, I've been doing modding and just tinkering with level design from quite an early age, really. I wrote my first game. Wrote my first game. I copied my first code out of a magazine when I was about 5 years old on a Commodore 64. So I've just been tinkering my whole life. I didn't start game dev properly, like as a career, until about 7 years ago. And now I'm doing it full time. I can still remember what it was as well. It was a hot air balloon that you could move around the screen. You could even change the colour of it too. Can we switch on class? No, of course we can't. So, if this is Starsim character, we're going to have to work out what class we're dealing with and handle it accordingly. We should be able to do a replicated teleport with that as well. Or chair vehicle. No, also just vehicle master. I forgot what the class is called now. Yeah, that one. Right, so if it's that, then we want to cast to our Starsim character. Otherwise, we want to cast to chair vehicle. Otherwise, we will do nothing. Right, so we're only dealing with the two pawn classes that we need to care about. So we should be able to do replicated teleports. Helps if I spell it right, doesn't it? Replicated. Why is that not coming up with my replicated teleport function? Yeah, Commodore 64 port would be interesting. Well, I never had a Sinclair. my friend had a Spectrum, and I'd go around his house and we'd play some truly impossible to complete games on his Spectrum. I preferred the Commodore 64. It was like console envy back then. Yeah. How much RAM does the Commodore 64 have? It's like 8K or something, isn't it? Oh, it's a macro. That's why I can't call it. Why did I make it a macro? Okay. Well, we shouldn't need that technically. So let's try it this way. Right, if we collapse that to a macro, and we call it get teleport transform, and we want to output transform. So I'm not sure why it being a chair class is making a difference, but I'll check the chair after this and we'll see. And then yeah, we're going to have to duplicate that, so get that out of the way. I mean, technically it shouldn't make any difference what class we're dealing with. But we'll try it. Try it and see. Oh, of course. It's because I haven't made it. Right, location. Rotation can stay 0, scale will be 1. Oh, of course, it's going to need an exec pin, isn't it? Curses. This is my favourite top tip, is that if you do type in execute for the name of the input pin and then as the name of the output pin, then you get no text on either. It just looks neater in the code. Yeah, it is now though. Yeah, not having text labels on there just makes the whole thing neater. working for the player should also work for the chair. Ah, so it's not... Okay, it doesn't recognize the class. Interesting. Right, so in that case, let's do this differently. So we'll just do the actor itself. I don't even need to do that. So we're just going to literally move the actor, whatever it is, without casting to it. And then we will just get player controller. It should be our local controller anyway. So we should have authority to do this, but we shall see. Now, the oldest Windows I know is 3.11 for work groups. That's what I did my first job with, setting them up and taking them out to schools and offices in our local area. Oh, I know the problem. Right. So I've just realised that it's hitting the fell off the ship check, which of course the chairs will be doing. So it's teleporting the chair down to the surface, and then the chair's like, oh no, I shouldn't be here. I'm far too far from the ship, and it's sending it back again. So all we need to do is not do that. Where's my begin play? There it is. Interaction, fell off ship check. There we go. So if we disable that and make sure it's not doing anything else. So if that's over there, do that. Ah, so no, we'll keep it but get rid of that one because we want to move the chair back to its original location if for any reason it gets knocked out of place. Because the chair is a pawn, if you get another physics object and you're kind of trying to wedge like a tablet and you kind of wedge it under the chair, then it makes the chair kind of bump to the side, annoyingly. But yeah, if you just do a check on that, it will teleport it back when it needs to. Quite a few blueprints. Quite a few. Right. Chair. Surface. Huzzah! Here we go. We have vehicles on the surface. Don't need anything more than a chair, do you? Ooh. And that was on the client as well, so even better. In fact, if I am, while we're testing stuff, I think it would be silly not to test both chairs. And we also need to set our restitution, I think, for this. So we're using no braking friction anyway. So why is it stopping? Yeah, let's try labeling physics on the capsule. Might be, yeah. Okay, that's reasonably hilarious. The chairs just fell over. Help, I've fallen down and can't get up. Yeah, so we don't want the capsule sim, of course. Because the capsule has a rounded bottom, doesn't it? So of course it fell over. I think we can actually stop it from pitching. Hang on, constraints, yeah. So lock rotation on Y. That should stop it falling over. Oh, and X actually, yeah. Yeah, because we only want it to rotate on Z axis. Should stop them falling over. It's Z up in Unreal. For now anyway, until they change it. Yeah, so I got no input. I'm assuming then it's because movement isn't applying a force. Yeah. Alright. Oh, and it's crashed again. Brilliant. Okay, so we don't want that. Yeah. But basically that's a test of being able to pilot a vehicle on surfaces, because what we're doing is we're possessing the vehicle and then just attaching a character to it to be the visual representation of the player. I got a 990X something or other. Can't remember now. Hang on. Yeah, so the Ryzen 9 9950X processor. I got 192 gigs of RAM and not that GPU, that one, the 4090. Make sure we're not simulating physics on that. Right, it should move now. Right, so okay, the rolling down the hill worked. Whee! I need to work out what that giant sphere is. That's not normal. But oh, I know what it is. That's the proxy Magellan. It's the old Magellan mesh. That should not be visible. And I know why it's visible. It's because we're on ID number 3, and it doesn't know not to show it on ID 3. That would be why. Right, so we can see the client in the chair on the surface. Now, can we swap? So that person's got out. That person's got in. Okay, seems to work. Can we roll down hills? That's the question. Yeah, the braking force is still too high. It comes to a stop too quickly, but we are now stuck in a hole. But yeah, so vehicle's confirmed. Now the interesting question is, obviously, as we then fly the ship away somewhere else, what happens to the chair that you left on the planetary surface? And I think for garbage cleanup purposes and general not having the game cluttered, we'll probably just have to delete the objects. And we might be able to save prop locations. I mean, the way the prop save works on the ship is it saves obviously the world coordinates of the prop when you put it down and it stops moving. So we can always load props back in wherever you left them. So we have object permanence on the ship. To have object permanence on the ground, we would need to save the ID of the planet. So probably the planet seed, to be fair. Yeah, so we'd probably take the seed for the planet, the XYZ for the object, save that in our object permanence, so that when you return to that planet, those same objects get spawned in the same place, but only when you're within range of them. Otherwise, they're going to spawn somewhere like off where the train hasn't been generated yet. Ideas. Yeah. Yeah, potentially. I mean, the issue is that we really want to be able to reuse this slot. So as we go from planet to planet, we want to be able to just, always have terrain in the same place. It really doesn't like doing that, does it? So what are we looking at here? So it's, yeah, it's just something in the plugin. I'm gonna have to look into that after the stream, make sure that it packages and doesn't do it on package. See you, Binary. Have a good one. So the next thing we need to do then is we need to make sure that the planetary surface is not visible if you're not on it. And then we also need to make sure that that proxy Magellan's not appearing as well. I just realised I'm surrounded by cats. I got one asleep on the desk next to me, and two asleep in the chair next to me. Right, so the proxy object. Yeah, so that's handling the movement. That's the only thing it's doing. Right. Yeah, so if the current vessel is not the target vessel, then we hide it. So that should be hidden regardless. I wonder if that's because in multiplayer... Oh, of course. Right, so this will be because I'm running it in the editor. Technically, there should be two separate player controllers, but I think that's probably got something to do with it. Let me make that a replicated variable to see whether or not that fixes it. Obviously, the ship that we're on, let's, where am I going? Replication there. Let's replicate that variable to see whether we can stop that from appearing. And at the same time, for our planetary terrain, we want to make sure that we hide that. So on our tick, so we're checking to see whether or not it should be in range based on it being in range. We also need to check to see whether we're on the right location. So if we get player controller and we cast to Starship Simulator controller, make it a pure cast, we don't need an execution pin. We get current vessel. So I suppose the surface itself needs to have an ID as well. Yeah, so we give it a planet ID, and we'll probably drive this from the seed. So, in fact, we definitely will drive that from the seed. So if that equals the seed value, so it's over there, or that does not equal that. So yeah, that way around. That does not equal that. Set that up there. So what we're saying is if it's over 1 million kilometers away, or it's not relevant for the vessel we're on, then we want to make sure that we freeze generation and hide it. So hopefully this will work smoothly with replication, although I predict mismatches between client and server there, but let's test it and see. So that should solve not showing it. Let's just do one client a minute and try that. Right, so I can definitely see the terrain. What if we just go to the shuttle? The terrain is not there. Ship's there, terrain is not, so that's working as intended. Tentatively go through there. So is the terrain now gone? No, because I know why. Because I didn't tell it which terrain it should be. It's set to 0, of course. 0 is the Magellan, so of course it's visible. You need to set it to 3, and now it should be invisible. Yeah, so now it's not there. So it should only be visible if you're on that surface, which means let's give that a try. Hello. Kitty who is obsessed with the mouse pointer still. Okay, so for the client, they're seeing the surface. And the server is not. Okay, so if the server goes down, they can see the surface. Obviously, there was a delay there because we had to wait for the tick to tick round to make sure that it was visible. Okay, so obviously the client can still see it. Deal with that proxy ship after. Which is interesting though, because that shouldn't have come up. Interesting. Alright, so if we send them back to the main ship. Ah! Right, I know why it's appearing. It's appearing because instead of teleporting back, I'm just using the Alt-1 debug teleport. So we're not actually telling it which ship we're on. See, now it's gone because we're on the shuttle. So if I go back to the Magellan, the big old proxy ship's gone because now we're on the right ID. So let's just laugh at the crash and continue. Hello. God, I'm getting needled. I forgot how sharp kitten claws are. Exactly, Kaji, yes, which I shall do right now. And yeah, and as Claire just pointed out, not being able to land starships on surfaces is an impractical. It's an engine problem. It's not a choice thing. If we could, we would definitely. I mean, the way to look at it is that take the Magellan class, 340 odd meters long, whatever it is, can't remember now. It contains several thousand wall panels, several thousand floor panels, hundreds and hundreds of props, probably thousands by the time we're done, thousands of lighting panels. So already you're dealing with, I'd say, 5,000 or 6,000 physical actors that make up that ship interior. And that's just now. We haven't even finished yet. So try moving 5,000 objects with physics in the world and then see what the CPU does. I mean, it wouldn't handle it at all. Yeah, it's about the complexity of the environment, and the same is going to be true for surfaces. So on the planetary surface, we will have multiple thousands of trees and multiple thousands of rocks, all rendered at once within your view frustum. So those objects are physically there, and again, you can't move that because there's too much stuff. And when you consider that all the props on the ship are also running physics, you've got a really, really massive physics environment that you just cannot move in the game world. It's just impossible. So again, you've got this problem where you've got a surface environment, which is static. You've got the ship interior environment, which is also static. Those things cannot meet. They cannot ever meet because they're both static. So by having shuttles to traverse the distance between the two, it means that we've got a seamless way, apart from the brief transition as you load the surface, a practically seamless way of transitioning from the ship to the ground without having to use loading screens or anything. There will be a bit of a loading screen. I mean, you've seen how fast the terrain generates. It's practically instant. But when we take the shuttle to the surface, we obviously need to teleport that shuttle from space to the surface environment. So there has to be a transition there. We'll just do like a really, really short 2 or 3 second cutscene where you just see the shuttle flying down, and now you're back in control when you're flying around above the surface. That should be the only loading screen in the whole game. But yeah, again, it's down to just the sheer complexity and object count of the surfaces and of the ships as to why we can't land starships. Again, there might be a solution for larger shuttles. Like we could have maybe a 2 or 3 room shuttle, which is capable of both flying in space and landing. Because again, it's about the complexity and the object count. So, it's possible. But you'll notice in Kwanga, you're not walking around whilst flying. And there's a big difference there. And the same is true for Elite Dangerous. You're in your ship. You cannot walk around your ship with physics whilst the ship is flying. And that's the critical point. If we had a static character in a static cockpit, then yes, we could do real-time landings. Same as Elite can. And it's amazing, to be honest, that No Man's Sky has recently achieved it. So now No Man's Sky can have ships you can walk around whilst landing. I genuinely never thought they'd do that, but they have. So, props to them. Well done. So really, it's only No Man's Sky and Star Citizen that have truly achieved that. Being able to walk around whilst transitioning to a surface in real time. I think Space Engineers as well, probably, to be honest. But yeah, there's a lot of technical complexity involved in those things, and it's a problem we don't need to solve. Yeah. Losing my voice. Well, yeah, if you give me $900 million, I'll make it work for this too. I'll give Chris Roberts a ring, see if you want to lend me some. What are we doing? Oh yeah, proxies. Right, so when we do our teleports, we want to make sure that we are setting the right thing. So luckily, we're already casting to player controller, so that makes life easier. So set vessel, or current vessel. It's going to be 3 on. Oh, sorry, no, it's not going to be 3, is it? It's going to be 0. 0. So obviously we're going to have some Caravella debug teleports at some point. along with all the other ships. So we'll probably need variations of this, but for now that will solve the problem. And equally, we need to do it on chairs as well, because they have the same code. Oh, and probably the debug camera as well. So chair vehicle master, same thing here. Set vessel, set current vessel to 0, and this will stop giant Magellan model from appearing in the middle of nowhere. Right, and the other thing actually was the client, wasn't it? So the client can still see the surface. So we know that it defaults to 0 on begin play. So we don't need to set the value. So why can they see it? I know why. It's because the on-tick event is only running on the server. That would be why. Well, I say on-tick, it's a looping function, but same diff. Right, so where we're running that, I think we'll do a separate one for visibility, which we want both of them to do, so because this is relevant for clients. That said, oh no, we do want to do this on the client, on the server only, because we're setting materials, aren't we? Yeah, so we'll just do check visibility. Visibility. Oh, I still spelled it wrong. Visibility. Ow. Those are some sharp little claws. Right, I think I'll stick this one on 0.1. So we'll run it 10 times a second because we're going to be doing something relatively lightweight. Simply, we were doing that. And that. So function check visibility. Right, this will just make sure that we show and hide as needed. Right, so we're going to cast to our child actor. Oh yeah, that was supposed to be a pure cast, wasn't it? So if they don't match, we hide it. If they do match, we don't hide it. Yeah, that'll do. Yeah, so we should never try and make it visible. Although, no, that's fine actually. So yeah, should never make it visible unless we absolutely need to see it. Which also means that this is kind of redundant because at no point do we ever want to see the planet unless we're on it. So that has become irrelevant to us. Yeah, so all we need to care about need that at all, do we? So we don't need that either. So yeah, we're just doing that. So we don't need to check distance anymore, because we're checking to see whether we're actually on it or not. Right, let's try this with a client. Well, if you want to get medieval, I've got some elderflower mead here, and it's very, very nice. Mead ASMR. Oh, that was really loud. So good. I do love me some mead. Okay, we see no planet for the client, which is good. We didn't want to see it on the client. And we don't see it on the server either, so that's good. Right, so if we run down on the server, it teleports us into the floor. Why is it doing that? There we go. Right, so server can see it. Client cannot, although the client can now see the giant Magellan. So there's probably some replication. Oh, and the client can see the surface too now. So if I teleport back to the ship, yes, client can still see them. Very nice, Jim. Yeah. Okay. Right, so it's working flawlessly for the host. So why does the client see stuff it shouldn't be able to see? Send the client down. Oh, look at that. So, right, I think that this is one of those, because I'm running it in the editor things. I will have to package and test it in multiplayer properly, because you can never guarantee that when you're playing it in the editor it's behaving like it does in a packaged game. Let's see whether this crashes. Yep. Oh no. Huzzah. Right, let's just play it standalone a minute, just to be sure. So, oh, interesting. Why is it doing that? Wasn't doing that before. Is it only the first time? Yeah, weird. I'm on the surface, I'm on the ship. I'm on the surface, I'm on the ship. I love how rapid that is. Okay, so just to double check, cannot see the surface. Can see the surface. So we should have, yeah, so we can see the proxy Magellan up there, which we should be able to see because we're not on the Magellan. So when you're not on the ship, you should see the proxy version of it, which we do. And then when we go back to the ship, the proxy is gone, which it should be gone. So for the host, at the very least, it's working flawlessly. So what should also be happening is the little proxy shuttle should be gone and invisible too. But it isn't. Whee! As you can probably see down there somewhere. Oh look, there's a that's my water mesh. Yeah, so that little proxy shuttle under the ship there should be invisible, but can't be because it's a nanite object. And I need to work out how we're going to handle the culling of nanite geometry over distance. But that's, as I say, that's a struggle for another day, that one. Right, let's see if I can remember how to add trees. Which we'll have to do in here under the child actor. Because it should do it based on a camera location. Yeah, so we should be able to add biomes to there. Why is it grayed out? What am I missing? Oh right, yeah, that was the that's the mask. Okay. There is a test map I can compare that against a minute. Oh, CSI, have a good one. Yeah, we need to add a chicken spawner, don't we? That's not impossible. That is a question of great debate, Sirius. Yes, I am of the opinion, and Claire disagrees with me heavily on this, but I'm of the opinion that if you find something cute and fluffy on an alien world, then you should be able to befriend it, bring it back to your ship, feed it, and love it for the little fluff ball that it is. Claire, on the other hand, thinks it is the kind of human behaviour that humans wouldn't be doing in 200 years, because you're taking a creature out of its natural habitat and keeping it imprisoned on your ship for all eternity. So yeah, we have this kind of difference in approach of how we do that. Luckily, I have the casting vote, so yes, I want cute little fluff balls that I can befriend and call my pet, and then have them roam around my quarters. Funnily enough, Flight of the Navigator was the exact thing I was thinking of. That little finger wrappy thing. Yeah, I mean, from a humanity perspective, I mean, and Claire's position is that, you know, in 200 years' time, humanity should have evolved to the point where we're not just ripping creatures out of their natural habitat and keeping them in a cage because they look pretty. And I agree. And I hate the fact that, you know, birds live in cages because they should be flying. But yeah, but cute things are cute, and I want one as a pet. So in the game, we will have cute things, cute fluffy things that we can put in our quarters, and they will make the place all the more cheerful. Yeah, that's not a bad point, AJ. You know, where do you draw the line? I mean, what about a snail or a worm? I mean, is it okay to keep them as a pet? What about a small rodent? Yeah, our holotech isn't that good yet. Yeah, and that was one of the questions for the biology lab. Like, are we, you know, what do we do with the samples after we bring them up from the surface? I mean, do we send them back down again? So we've just picked up some alien bunny rabbit. Do we now just, does it live on the ship now? Do we send it back? Or do we throw it out of an airlock? What do we do with all the biological samples? But make them pets, that seems the obvious solution. I mean, Dr. Flox had a whole bunch. Yeah, well, working on a spawning system is another step beyond. We're not quite there yet. I think before we can do spawning systems, we need to work on biomes. Well, I'm getting trees and things, and that's what I was doing, wasn't it? I was looking at where are the trees gone. I need to find the engine plugin folder. I think it was that one. There's probably a bunch of detail on Shader World that I have yet to scratch the surface of, but we shall see. Yeah, so here's an example of a height map brush. So you can see here that we are modifying the terrain with a brush, and you know, we can move that brush around, and the terrain, you know, is changing accordingly. So you know, move it there. Rocks and trees are reforming around it. So we can, if we needed to, if we were spawning, say, an alien structure, we can take this geometry stamp it down, and now the alien structure obviously goes on a nice flat bit. Same for villages and things. We can flatten the terrain as needed. So that's something we can do. You can see here it is generating foliage and trees and all that good stuff to a considerable distance into the distance. Let's see if we can't get some better lighting. Yeah, so obviously we have lots of different things we can do with this. These little black squares are a result of shadow casting from virtual shadow maps, which we can fix. If I recall, we turn off adaptive topology. There we go, that fixes that. Yes, so geometry stamps can be huge or they can be tiny. Like this here, this mountain is one giant geometry stamp. I can't remember which one it is. Hang on, let's speed our camera up a bit. That's a mountain that we're moving around. I guess that's another one. The nice thing is you can see that it's also adding its own texture and material and everything as well. So again, if we were wanting to spawn something on a planetary surface which is specific to like an alien race, then we can do so. And you can see that it affects the generation region for like trees and stuff. So if I move it, those trees disappear or they come back. So we should have a lot of fine control over how we do things on surfaces. And then yeah, like at ground level, we can be dense with our foliage. Now all this foliage is going to be masked materials. So like the grass here, that's going to be a bunch of just masked planes, which is not great for nanites. So we will obviously make our own foliage that is all nanite optimized. So it's all geometry, it's all done properly, and it'll all be nanite foliage as well. So it'll be using 5.7's nanite foliage system, which means every single leaf on every single tree will be a physical 3D object. Every branch will be a 3D object. And unlike this, where it's all 2D planes and looks fake, they will be like proper 3D objects, and we don't need to use world position offset on them either. We can use actual proper bones and actually move the bones for moving the branches. It's a very, very cool system. Yes, and yeah, the other cool thing with 5.7 is it has a procedural plant system. If anyone's ever knows about SpeedTree, I've lost my water. Where's my water? There it is. SpeedTree enables you to make procedural trees by throwing parameters at them. That's being built in to Unreal for not just trees, but I think any geometry. So you can parameterize the creation of foliage, which means if we have, and this is my intention for doing it, so we have a database of different shapes of leaf. We have lots of different materials for leaves, obviously complete spectrum of colors for leaves. And then we parameterize things like how spindly the trees are, how thick the trunks are. Then pretty much you could make any type of tree you could possibly imagine procedurally just by combining these assets together in the parameterized system. So, you know, when you go down to alien surfaces, you can have truly unique foliage, which is unique per object as well. So this tree would be different from this tree rather than all being copy-paste, which is also very, very cool. Yeah, exactly, Seraph. And I really want to go deep on the science for that, so that we do exactly that. We delve into what does the fauna need to look like, or what does the flora need to look like, based on the surface conditions. So if it's a really, really high gravity world, you're not going to have big tall trees. They're going to be like lichen and algae and like mushrooms and things which are going to grow up in the high gravity environment. Whereas on a very low gravity world, you would expect much taller, spindlier things. And we'll definitely use data points like that to generate the foliage on planets. So, you know, a low gravity world, I want to have like massive, massive trees, like way bigger than we get here on Earth, which would be really cool. But my reason for loading this map is I can't remember how to add the foliage system, because like this has got, see, it's got the biome here, but it's all grayed out. Yeah, I'm going to have to read up on exactly how this is being done, because oh, hang on, perhaps it's from there. Okay, perhaps I'm just missing a drop down. Hang on, let's go back to our test map again. I suppose the other thing is we need to... The material, everything I've set up for mine is probably different from this one, so we might not have the same biome information. But yeah, let's have a look. No, we're still on 5... Ow! Just got sliced. We're still on 5.6. We haven't updated to 5.7 yet. But when we do, yes, nanite foliage will very much be enabled. Look, I did. I missed a drop down, that's why. Right. Okay, well, we got rocks. That's something, I suppose. But the nice thing about this is it's updating for the height that we're at, and it's also putting them in the sea, which we don't necessarily want. So, okay, I'll need to look at that. But this should be running off of Unreal's PCG tools, so we should be able to make not just wide area biomes, but like microbiomes within there as well. So, you know, if we've got like a forest biome, we don't want just like a carpet of trees. We want detail within that too. So we'll have things like clearings and glades within that forest as well. Me typically being me, I haven't read any of the instructions or documentations for this plugin, so I'm literally just winging it. I would have thought there should still be a biome there. Let's just add that one. Did that double the density? Who knows? Don't know, but yeah, I will actually make an effort to actually read the instructions, and then we'll see what we can do with it. But yeah, so I think that is pretty much time. But yeah, hopefully you can see that planetary surfaces are coming. You can see how we're going to do it. It should be a relatively smooth and straightforward system. The funny thing is, it's like generating the terrain and populating the terrain. That's the easy part. Like, you can make, you know, detailed, lush surfaces fairly simplistically, but transferring the player from the ship down to that surface in a smooth and meaningful way, that's the challenge. So I guess once we've got the surfaces how we want them, and we'll just, you know, we'll keep it as a teleporter for now whilst we're working on it, and during the dev cycle I'll just have a teleporter next to the shuttle one in the armory, or bathroom as it now will be, so you can just teleport down and, you know, roam around looking at rocks. But yeah, this, because I discussed this with Claire, so we don't want to put this in the demo update yet. So over the next couple of weeks, when we put the VR update out, it won't include this. We want to keep it on the dev builds only until it's a lot more polished and a lot more functional. And then we'll probably do I'll probably do a build specifically for this once we're kind of close to finishing it. But yeah, planetary surfaces, huzzah. Yeah, no, we won't do the 24-hour one tonight. Yes, I am streaming tomorrow at the usual time, 8 o'clock UK time. Sunday, what's Sunday? Oh, it's Caravella, isn't it, on Sunday? So yes, I'll be working on some more of the Caravella stuff tomorrow. But yes, sometime between now and Christmas, I did mention it on the last stream, but I'm going to be doing a 24-hour charity stream. We still need to pick a date for when we're going to do that. And I think Claire needs to arrange something with the special effect charity just to kind of make them aware that we're doing that. And I need to look into the YouTube settings to make sure we've got it all set up properly. But yeah, I shall stream for 24 hours straight. It's funny, I have like a little desktop barbecue thing, so I might do a desktop barbecue midstream. But yeah, and I don't know what we'll work on for that stream. I think it'll just be a little bit of everything. Yeah, I'll see if I can get the VR update out first. And then we'll do a 24-hour just for funsies stream and see what we can get done. Thank you, Madman. Appreciate it. I stream 3 times a week anyway, normally, so yeah, feel free to tag along for the ride. We're always up to something amusing, or something ridiculously geeky, normally. Right, okay, I shall call it there for tonight, so have a good one, everybody, and I shall see you tomorrow night for Sunday stream. Bye for now.